What we call tolerance is often just condescending. It's often just saying, okay, you believe what you want to believe, that's fine with me. I think true respect, and it's one of the reasons I get along so much better with fundamentalist Christians than I do with liberal Christians. Because fundamentalist Christians, I can look them in the eye and say, you are wrong. They also know that I will always fight for their right to say that. And I will celebrate their right to say that. But I will look them in the eye and say, you're wrong. And fundamentalists will look me in the eye and say, you're wrong. And that, to me, is respect. The more liberal religious people who go, there are many paths to truth, you just go on and maybe you'll find your way, is the way you talk to a child. And I bristle at that. So I do very well with proselytizing hardcore fundamentalists. And at a very deep level, I respect them. And at a very deep level, I think I share a big part of their heart. I think at a certain sense...
You're listening to Truth on Tap with hosts Kevin Keir.
Yeah, whatever. You know something, I have a problem with the way he approaches things. Listen to me, people. You've heard me before go after the conspiracy theorist. As I've said, and I'll say again, based on the current body of evidence that I have access to and the rational ability to decode in some way, I think 5 or 10% of your popular conspiracy theories need to be continuously looked at. I think there's something to them, possibly. But that puts that 90% up there at bullshit. And let me tell you the critical difference between someone who is a easily swayed conspiracy theorist and someone who's not really buying the evidence after he looks at it. All right? The person who typically buys into a conspiracy theory, typically, we're talking about under the hump of the bell curve, not outside where the standard deviations are, in the big part, in the camel's hump. At least one of them. This person wants simple answers and simple explanations for what are, in reality, very complex situations. Jump over to where I am right now. I'm not going to be a fundamentalist and tell you you're wrong. Why would he rather be told you're wrong than to be told find your own path? Does that make any sense to you? I'll tell you why. It's simpler for him. It's simpler for him. He wants everything to be black and white. It's one of the most common logical fallacies used. If it isn't this, well, it must be that. When there's almost always shades of gray, as we talked about in the last episode. That's what this guy's saying. He wants yes or no. And he wants the yes or no to always be provable. But it's not. And he's sitting here talking about social issues as if all of them have a black or white answer. They don't. Where do you think tolerance comes from? Would we need tolerance if everything were black and white? No. No. If it was wrong and we could prove it to be a Muslim, then we wouldn't have to have tolerance for them. But the truth is there are degrees of Muslims and their behavior. And some of them are genuinely good people that want their children to get a decent education, want to love their neighbor, they give more to charity than the average Christian. If you don't believe me, look it up. Okay, and you're going to hate on that person? Why? Because the news media has presented you with a fringe element that attacks us. Those people, yeah, I want to kill them. I'd kill them with my bare hands. There's no question about that. But how are you going to label a couple of billion people based on what a couple of 100,000 have done? That math doesn't work for me. I can't use that math in my thinking. It does not work. And I was an English major. But you don't have to be a math major to understand that fucking math. Seriously. So go ahead and hate all Muslims if you want to, but understand that you're being remarkably and decidedly narrow-minded in your social views. This is what he wants. He wants it black or white. Do I like Muslims or do I hate Muslims? He didn't say that. I'm paraphrasing, but it's the point. It's the principle, and on that issue he is solid, and he is not being in any way vague. He has said, I want the answer straight. And what he's not said but implied is even when there's not a straight answer. There isn't a straight answer for everything, folks. There just isn't. I'm sorry you want it to be that simple. It's not. So many social issues are so complex that a simple black or white yes or no is not going to get it done. You have to explore on different levels with different scenarios to even get a feeling for it. So you want to find out how to identify a simple mind? The type of mind that comes into this church as a poor sinner, that's the first identity. They're either going to be the type that attack all the time, and or they're going to be the type that want yes/no answers at all times. You don't get that. Life's not simple. If you want it to be simple, fine. Simplify it and live in your fantasy land. But it's not simple. It's complex. There is a huge, big bowl of soup with stuff going every which way, and until you start breaking down those components into what they do, what they are, and how systems work together, you're not going to understand. So welcome to church. Praise logic in this bitch. Throw money at ideas. Throw money into research. Throw money at education, not at an invisible dude. That's my point. Again, I'm not trying to talk you out of your religion. Hell, I believe you could probably stick with your religion if you have one and join my religion. Because my religion, you could just view it, let's say you're a fundamentalist Christian. And you may say, Kevin, I disagree with this whole black and white thing. I think most things are black and white. You can disagree with that. It's fine. But you could join my church and decide to just use it to decide how you take in and process your news. Just news, not even any other information. Just news. How do I weigh the bullshit? Well, this church would be good for you for that. Call it your news church. Yeah, why not? Probably going to play one more clip for you here, but before I do that, I described the differences I have with this man, and I think he's remarkably simplistic in his thinking. And this is what happens when you find somebody that goes on TED Talks or that ends up on Big Think, and they're a fucking magician. Okay? Not where you're drawing your best philosophers from. Okay? These are guys that know the tricks behind pulling rabbits out of hats, and then want to come tell you about the moral imperative. And the translation doesn't work well. Doesn't work well. Apples and oranges there. I'm not saying he's not a bright guy. I just think he's simplistic in his critical thinking skills. That's all. And I hope you are. I hope you let yours be as complex as the world demands them to be to accurately weigh evidence and form beliefs based on truth. He said he thought that was the quickest way to truth. That is not the quickest way to truth. Yes or no? That's the quickest way to uncertainty. That's the quickest way to a wrong answer when it can't be yes or no. Sometimes the right answer, people, is 16 paragraphs long. And that's just life. I can't help you if you don't like that. If you want to turn that into a yes or no, go ahead. So this church is all about critical thinking, logical thinking, reasoning skills. We make mistakes and we know it. We make mistakes and we know it. We make critical thinking faults, errors in our judgments, and we know it. People make notoriously bad eyewitnesses. We know that. Our memories get changed over time sometimes. We know that, especially those vague ones that we have trouble recollecting. And we paint them red, white, and blue to fit our beliefs, however we want to use them that day. And then we pretend that they were red, white, and blue from their birth when they weren't. And that's a sad thing, because that's stepping outside of truth. And that's against everything this show stands for. Truth is painful. It's painful. It's ugly, nasty shit. And because I think when you use truth to look at the human condition, I again go back to the general belief right now as it stands with the information I have available. I mean, we aren't all that. We are not all that. Not that much to be proud of. You could probably closely align my view of humanity to Tyler Durden's in Fight Club. It's that bad. I think we've got hope, though. He didn't think we had any hope. I think we have a chance to understand each other, and that is where real education starts, understanding your fellow human that's different than you. A lot of people that have shows and listen to my shows are either racist or have racist tendencies, and they admit it, fine. Or they just like to sound racist because it gets, it gets listens, it gets a little bit of it gets a little bit of rating stirred up. That's fine if you want to use it for that. Who's writing you a ticket? I'm not. But to say without any condition that one race is better than another, it should, right on the surface, sound stupid to you. How can you say that? Why would you say that? I mean, if you're just going to base it on your experience, if you're a white person who has dealt with, say, 500 black people person to person in your life over an extended period of time, and each one of those black people to you seemed inferior, seemed stupid, couldn't speak right, didn't dress right, and you're just going to say that, well, fuck, that's 500 people. I'm going to go ahead and use inductive reasoning here and assume that all of them are like that. I could almost give you a little credit. But you know there's a lot more than 500 blacks in the world, right? Have you bothered doing a random sample across the globe to see what their intelligence and behavior and dress was like? To get a better, more accurate picture? Do you even understand sampling techniques and how to get a fair and representative cross-section of a population? If you don't, then you really can't have a good grip on these groups that you've had minimal exposure to. And there is no way you're going to get me to believe that one race, by default, is better than another. Don't buy it. I'm a mutt myself. I've got Indian in me. Well, I guess I'm mostly white, but I have some Cherokee Indian, I know that. So my ancestors are from Norway and England, and we made a pit stop in Germany. And the first, on my dad's side over here, was Dr. Hans Kierstead to Manhattan. You can look it up. And he actually owned a pretty good chunk of Manhattan and sold it for cheap. We've never been very good with money in my family. Always been pretty smart, but not too good with money. So he sold, I think, I don't know, a couple thousand acres of Manhattan for probably $1 an acre. You know, it's kind of like Rain Man. It's kind of like you know, that's $1. That's $1. How much is a car? $1. You know, but I can go do open heart surgery with one eye closed drunk and save your life. So maybe it is. Maybe it's a functional disability, but no, I don't want to pick on Dr. Hans like that. I think he got fair market value for the land when he sold it. Just didn't see the future very well. What are we talking about here? We're talking about what if somebody started a church that was based on nothing but reasonable thinking. And what it does, and this is something I said earlier, is to put in, we have to include, because we don't have a giant God telling us how to behave, we have to include what's good behavior, what's right behavior. That's a hard one, isn't it? Because it changes from culture to culture, changes from situation to situation. When you get deep into these philosophers and you start understanding the difference between absolutist views and utilitarian views of philosophies, even when it comes to murder, you're going to be confused. And I say, right when you get confused, you have just found the essence of what this church is. This is a church that asks questions and may not always come up with answers. But what it will always do is promote understanding. Now, this church will probably never actually become a church, and if it did, nobody would probably attend. But wouldn't it be nice if we had something like that? Something where people could say, look, I'm not too big on the invisible guy thing. I don't believe in the Greek gods or Allah, or I don't follow Siddhartha Gautama or Ogun from Africa, or any of the other ones. You know. And because of that, I'm looking for a living philosophy. Well, what better to base your living philosophy on than reasonable thinking with a fairly elected, from a wide body of participants, set of moral codes? Because you will see that most countries across the world have a certain moral code in their laws. It's integrated. How they're enforced, how often they're enforced, penalties, all that's debatable. But in general, you're not allowed to walk over and kill your neighbor, right? In general, you're not allowed to go around raping people or hurting children. In general, you're not allowed to go around stealing your neighbor's property or bearing false witness against people. That gets you in trouble. These things are fairly universally accepted, even in countries where the government themselves are so fucking corrupt and dirty and evil that they routinely torture their own citizens for information. And don't think America's above that. We're not. We've got shadow organizations, and they're there for a purpose. And it's because we don't want to see the mess. That's really what it comes down to. We don't want to see the messy stuff. We just let them do it and hope they keep us safe and let us sleep at night. And then as soon as something happens, we're all over them, aren't we? We are all over them. And I'm one of those people that cannot advocate for torture. I think you have to draw the line there.